This is the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode number 93. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. In this episode, I'm going to speak to Sandra Milliken again. If you would like to go back and listen to episode 92, that will give you quite a bit of background. In this episode, Sandra's going to talk about when she began to compose and her compositional style. Very interesting to listen to. And she will talk about the Queensland Kodaly Choir Legacy Project. You are going to want to hear about this. If you use singing in your music classroom or you are a choral conductor, you need to know about the Queensland Kodaly Choir Legacy Project. She tells you all about that. This episode is worth listening to, my friends. And welcome back to the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, Sandra Milliken. Hello.
Hi.
It's great to have you back. And if you did not listen to the previous episode, go back and listen to that as well. Sandra had many interesting and inspirational things to say. But in this episode, I want to focus on your compositions. So Sandra, as a composer, so tell us, when did you start to compose?
Ooh. Well, I guess my composition started when I was in school, at high school. Obviously, I had to do assignments, so I didn't mind doing those little compositional things. But actually, on the side, when ABBA came out, I got inspired to be a bit of an ABBA kind of thing, and I used to play the guitar, so I composed a couple of ABBA-esque
Yeah.
style songs, which I still have. They were just and the words. They were words. I can still remember the melodies because I didn't notate the melody. I just wrote words and chords. And it had three-part harmony in the chorus.
Wow.
I can still hear it, yes. So that's when I first started composing. But I guess I didn't have much in the way of mentors in regards to women composers were just not a thing when I was younger.
Mm,
You
mm.
know, it was not a career path for anyone, really. Women composers were few and far between, and I lived in Cairns. I don't think I knew any women composers except for a lady called Terry Jones, who lived in Innisfail, and she actually wrote some fantastic works, instrumental works for, she did a ballet called The Enchanted Garden. And yeah, anyway, so she was the only one that I knew. But I did all my theory, my Amy B theory exams, and did grade 6. And so I've always had an avid interest in harmonies and love playing lots of pop music. So I know a lot about chords, those sorts of things, how melodies fit the harmonies. Yeah, so I really didn't do anything much until I think maybe it was just all building up and I was collecting information in my mind. And then just before I went on the Churchill Fellowship in about 1999, I started writing a small mass, a Missa Piccola. Well, actually, was it a Missa Piccola? No, maybe it was just a Missa. I started mucking around with a mass, and I'm good friends with Piroshka Varga, who was also did a lot of work in the Kodaly area,
Yes,
and
yes.
she'd introduced us to some of her Hungarian composers in some of the summer schools for the choral music, and I was really inspired by that. So I started writing this mass. And I sent it to her, the little draft, and she said, "Oh, keep working on it." Anyway, I then went on the Churchill Fellowship. I visited 56 choirs during my 3-month tour overseas, a lot of them in Finland, Estonia, Sweden, England, the United States, and Canada. And I was very inspired by new ideas and thinking outside the box. I really heard some really fantastic music and some far out music too. But I all of a sudden I got all this inspiration. So I was on a flight on Alaskan Airlines flight from Seattle back to Vancouver, and when they bring their in-flight meal to you, they give you a little piece of paper with a Bible verse on it. They don't do it anymore. I know. How random was that?
Yes.
This Bible verse. And I looked at the Bible verse and I went, ding! We were soaring above the clouds. I was not sitting with my husband. And of course, I didn't have a pen in my hand. I yelled out to my husband, "You got a pen?" So he passes his pen over. I start writing on a serviette. So
Oh no, that's so classic.
I
Penned on a
composed,
serviette.
yep, penned on a serviette. So I composed one of my first works that was published on a serviette.
Oh, so good. As the Americans would say, a napkin, wouldn't they?
And oh, a napkin, yeah, yeah.
Yes, but we
So
say
that's how I
serviettes.
started.
So,
Yeah, so
okay,
that's how I
sorry.
started.
The Bible
Yeah.
verse and the composition.
Oh,
Did you
I
set it
will.
to music or did it inspire you to write?
It inspired me to write that. I composed that verse.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, and it was written a cappella for not electro. It was a women's choir, Peninsula Women's Chorus, and I wrote it in 5 or 6 parts. It's a long time ago, and they did record it as well, so I gave it to them. So I will lift my eyes. Yeah. Anyway, I can't remember it. It's just off the top of my head, but that's actually what started the flow. And after that, I just started composing crazily in that year. After after I came back, and then it just kept happening.
oh my goodness, you let the cork out.
I did, yes. It was like I was unplugged. Yes. All of a
That's
sudden,
so
all
good.
everything I had, all my experiences, all my musicianship, everything all sort of just came to that point, and that's where I started composing.
How amazing. Oh, and hearing
Yeah.
Peninsula region, it's taking me back to my time in Cairns. Yes, and I conducted the Peninsula region
Oh
junior
yes.
choir. All of the kids
Right.
came and we did a little tour up Hopevale and oh, it's that beautiful part of the
Yeah,
world, isn't it? So
it
you
is.
grew up in Cairns.
I did, yes.
Wow. When did you move to Brisbane?
1994 it was. So I've been here 30 years.
Oh,
Is that right? 30 years? Yes.
oh, don't ask me to do
Yeah.
maths. I
Yeah,
don't
so
know.
I had a lot of good background in Cairns because Cairns is a very musical city. There's the Cairns Choral Society, so I did some directing with them. I was accompanist for them as well. That's where
Mm.
I started my first conducting. Um, I wasn't a trained conductor at that point, so but I still managed to do okay at the Eisteddfods for some of the little glees that I conducted. So yeah, it
Oh,
was
how
cool. All good fun.
fabulous.
Yeah,
Oh, well, hello to all those people in Cairns. I was
Cairns.
just up there
Yeah,
in September. Hello to those people that went to that workshop. Yeah, no, fabulous, fabulous place. And some wonderful educators and musicians, of course, up there. Okay, so can you tell us some main influences on your compositional style? Or do you feel you have, I mean, I'm sure you're talking eclectic, you're talking inspiration from all sorts of things.
yeah.
So you probably don't have one style. Um, but what are the main influences on your styles?
Styles. Well, I guess, as I mentioned, I've had exposure to a lot of pop music,
Mm,
but also classical, because the difference between pop music and classical is that classical you can often change the harmony on every beat, right?
mm,
Like a Bach chorale. Pop music, you have a chord mostly for the whole bar or bars.
mm.
So
Yeah.
that's the main difference. But, I think a lot of people kind of mesh these things together. It's all integrated these days.
Mm.
But yeah, I'll have to go back to the question.
The influences on your style.
That's right. Okay. Well, of course, I write mainly choral music and vocal music.
Mm.
So it's the words that influence the style for me to write in.
Ah.
You see, because I read the words, and as I don't particularly follow one style or have developed my own style, I tend to compose to the words.
Hmm.
Now, my style always focuses on harmony, because I think as singers we need to be able to hold on to something. You know,
Yes.
if we don't have instruments that are accompanying us, I think harmonies or the melody, you know, we always think vertically for harmony, horizontally for the melody. So there's always got to be some point where we're keeping the pitch. And and I don't work with professional singers. I write music for the community choirs,
Hmm.
or very good community choirs, because I have written some very challenging pieces, as well. But I think, you know, the melody, and I like people to be able to sing something again. I don't like to write something that's just so atonal, and yeah, it's all very intellectual,
Hmm.
but does it get performed again?
Mm.
You know, those are the things that kind of right. Now, I know I had an interview to become, you know, do a composer's course to study composing, and I was told to forget everything that was in my heart.
Oh, I'm not doing
And
that
use
course.
only my brain. Yep.
No, 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 no,
And I can't do that. So,
no, that's
so,
ridiculous.
so, you know, because I know some new age composers have, they develop their own tonal systems, they develop their own rhythmic system, and I didn't want to get into that.
It's
I
got to be something. If you're writing for real people, you need to connect with them and their experience and their heart. There is
Yeah,
absolutely no point if you don't do that. I know that's my personal opinion, but look, I'm not interested in having, like you said, the intellectual cleverness of a piece and go, well, that's thank you for that. And it's not impacted me in any way other than perhaps my brain, but even then my brain doesn't need that, thank you very much. So no, I'm pleased you write for real people, and connecting with the
yes.
heart is just vital.
So I didn't end up going and studying composition.
But what, that same course,
Yeah, I mean,
oh,
yeah,
I
no,
would have,
I didn't. That was for the Sibelius Academy, believe it or not.
oh,
Yeah. So the particular composer that I had an interview with, yeah, yeah.
oh,
Because they were looking for new, you know, and I mean,
oh.
I've even been criticized by Australian composers that I'm not, you know, not new or new enough, or, but there are so many of us that are writing for choirs. It's different if it's instrumental. I think for instrumental, you can be a bit more new, but for
Mm,
choirs, I think it's really important that there is a sense of harmony, and it doesn't have to be just a block, you know, do mi so chord. It
mm.
can be something that's interesting, but you know, and it can alternate between parts that aren't so sonorous or
Predictable.
consonant. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. Predictable, you know. So yeah. So anyway, so I didn't study composing, but I did. I have written a lot of pieces, a lot of original works. And I remember Larry Sitsky said to me he heard a premiere of one of mine in Sydney with a Finnish choir that came on a tour here, and I wrote Judith Wright's "The Old Prison," and it was written. It was multi-divisi piece, and Larry Sitsky also had a premiere that night at this concert, and he and I got to meet. And he said to me, "You should be writing instrumental music." And I said, "But I don't have a pedigree. I don't have a composing pedigree." He said, "But you, with this choir and all those parts, you could write instrumental music." So that's what I remember he told
Oh,
me.
wow.
But
But you,
anyway, so
you're not
I
interested in that? Have you ever been tempted to do instrumental?
Well, I actually had a commission last year that I wrote my first string quartet for the Sydney Boys Grammar School. They have a very talented group of boys who are going to premiere that in Musica Viva competition this year for string quartet. So that was called the Chasm. So yeah, I love doing it. It was very interesting. You don't have to worry about the words. That's the thing. And I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about the ranges of the voices. And I don't have to worry about which vowel's going to be sung on this high note. Do you know what I mean? So it's a
Mm,
totally different thing.
mm.
Anyway, it was a real experience. So yes, I should really get into that a bit more.
Oh,
But,
well, I'm sure.
I teach singing, I conduct choirs. I'm so interested in the voice and vocal technique and writing things that are suitable for young people with developing voices. So yeah, it's a whole pedagogical thing for me as well.
Yes, and that's really important, and that adds to the quality of what you do. So yes, so it's all right. Stay. We need you to stay doing what you're doing. It's good to pop out a bit, right, for strings, but come back to us. Come back to us,
Right.
singers. Yeah. Okay. So your composition process, generally text first. Your little Bible verse it was. Text first or melody first or comes together, or is there a way that happens mainly?
Ooh, okay. It's normally text first, because I will read poems and look for things if I want to write about something. I think, oh, I'd like to write something about the sea. So I look up poems, and then I have to get permission to use the poems, of course, if they're copyright. So my publisher handles those sorts of things. But sometimes I get an idea, like Tango in Five that I wrote for. It's got five parts, but it's actually, a tango is a dance in 4/4, and it has one bar that's got a 5/4 in it.
Ah,
I wrote it with onomatopoeic symbols, so as you know, I made up the language that was in that one. So they were my words.
oh,
I actually
fun.
had the reason I wrote that one is because I had broken ribs. I fell over in Finland. I
Hopefully
broke
not
two
doing a
ribs.
not doing a tango, I hope.
No, but I did go tangoing with a friend of mine. She's a terrible influence. Oh, we went tangoing, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so that's why I wrote that tango. So it's 4/4 for 4 bars, and then it has an extra bar 5, and it's written in 5/4. Anyway, it's a bit of a fun piece. So yeah. So usually yes, I do have words first. Other times I might start a melody with a chord, and I might have a chord progression, simply a chord progression that I have in my mind. I might even play sort of, and then, you know, come up with some sort of thing like that and go, okay, can I put a melody to that? And then I'm like, oh, what about some words? So sometimes I write the words as I go along. Another way is I say to my husband, because he actually writes some lyrics for me, and I say, I want to do something about, something Spanish. And he actually came up with the words for at the milonga. And the milonga is a dance party where you learn to salsa, and you go, you have your lesson, and then you dance for the rest of the night with partners. Yeah. So he actually wrote the lyrics for that one. And it's been quite a successful piece at the milonga. So yeah, sometimes he'll write lyrics for me as well. I have a couple of friends who write poems. I've used their lyrics before. I have a friend in Sydney who writes some funny lyrics. I've got Flamenco Flamingos, which is a great fun piece, which I've done with a secondary school choir. It's SSA, treble voices. That's a bit of a fun one. Yeah. I've also written a piece called Sudoku, which is, I wrote the words for it. Sudoku, of course, the game,
Yep.
the 9 numbers. I was on a choir tour, and one of my choristers was doing it. She's 18 or 19 years old, and I said, "What's that?" And so she explained how to do it. Well, I was hooked. I used to do Sudoku all the time. Yeah. So I composed a piece called Sudoku, and it's a 2 part, and it goes into a 3 part canon, and it's got several languages in it, counting. So uno, due, tre, quattro, cinque, un, deux, trois in French. It's in German. It's in Japanese as well. Yeah, so there's a few languages in there. So it's got a canon in the middle of it. So that's a bit of a fun piece as well.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I want to look that up. Actually,
Yeah.
there's some music Sudoku that I've created on
Oh,
Crescendo.
right. Yes.
So if you
Yeah.
remember, you can go, and instead of the 9 numbers, there's 9 symbols, 9
Right.
music
Yeah.
symbols. So it's exactly the same thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
you see, you're into Sudoku or not, aren't you? But I really, really, really want to look up that piece now of yours.
Yeah. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, numbers, numbers everywhere. 81 numbers in a square. Numbers, numbers. It's like my mind's going crazy. It's not fair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in each square. Yeah,
Oh,
because it has a little rest before the number 9 when you're ready to finish it off. Yeah. Anyway, it's a bit of a
oh,
cool
I love it.
piece.
Look, I'm going to write that one down. I want to look that one up. Sudoku. Oh, I love it. Okay, excellent. All right. Can we talk about the the Queensland Kodaly Choir Legacy Project? So,
Yes.
it's out now at time of recording, but I will be airing this episode later in 2024 because I madly record in my holidays so that I can cope with working full time and still having new podcasts. So,
Yes, that's
yes.
right.
So by the time this comes out, it will be well and truly live. Can you tell us, well, what it is and what's the purpose and how did you get involved?
Right. Well, this is a special project from on behalf of the Queensland Kodaly Choir, who had been running for many years, and they've had a few directors, but James Kelly figured prominently in with this group, and he said it began as a youth choir, and then everybody got older, so um, it got to the point where they um James had moved from that area, and they were trying to get other conductors to come in. So they tried a few conductors, and they eventually decided that they were going to fold
Mhm.
um, and disband. So they had accumulated some money over this time, and they thought, what can we do with this money that can um, be a legacy for the community and for music and for the Kodai work that we've been doing and supporting. And they came up with the idea of having some free music written, pay the composers to write it with this money, and have the music available free as downloads. So I was invited to be a part of this project, and so was Astrid Jorgensen from most people know her from pub choir, but of
Mhm.
course she is a fantastic musician, great Kodai exponent as well, and a great classroom music teacher before she went into pub choir, which now consumes her life.
Yes. Hi, Pub Choir. Hi, Astrid. And
Yeah,
you can go back and listen to her on the Crescendo podcast. The
right,
episode
yeah.
number does not come into my head. I'm sorry. I'll put it in the
No, but
show notes. So,
she's a
yes.
fabulous musician.
Yeah.
So this
Lovely
Astrid was
person.
asked to write
Mhm.
20 original pieces, and also Faye White from Victoria, um, who actually wrote some Lunig. She was given some Lunig words, and she wrote some pieces. She's a more of a folk
Mm.
styled performer. So, and then I was asked to write arrangements of 20 folk songs because we've always, a lot of the folk songs can be used for teaching Kodai with, pentatonic scales and other modes. So, that was really good. So the three of us got to be a part of this project. So my component then was coming up with James and Judy Johnson. Had also put together a list of a few titles, and then my husband and I searched through for some more folk songs that would be suitable. Now, of course, Australian folk songs can be a little gruesome.
Yes.
Uh, and it's really hard to find. So, yeah, we did a lot of research, and of course, some of our colloquial terms, are very interesting as well.
Hmm.
So, I was thinking that we needed the folk songs to be singable by a wide number of choirs, as well as school choirs. And James said, "Oh, just keep it simple, and you can just do a piano part with one of them, blah blah blah, with this, and add an instrument on this." And yeah, okay. Well, I started off, and I can't remember which one was the first one, but as I went along, I realized I kept thinking of people like Anthony Young in my head, who's got boys' choirs at St. Lawrence, and I'm thinking of, the Queensland Youth Choir, those sorts of other choirs around the place. And I thought, well, you know, I need to write a bit of a variety. I need to write some SATB, I need to write some TB, changing voice. I need to be aware of that. I need to write some stuff for primary school. Well, okay. So so I started off with like Andy's Gone with Cattle. So Andy's Gone with Cattle is she's talking about Andy's gone away and we don't know when we're going to see him again. So it's more a women's song. So I wrote it a cappella for SSAA. And then I thought, oh, well, hang on. There could be an SSA choir, good girls choir that could sing this as well. So I thought, I'll write an SSA version and I'll write it with accompaniment. So I did that. And then I thought, oh, well, I could actually write a two-part version too, couldn't I? Oh, well, yeah, I'll do that. So when you've actually got the bones of something, the foundation, it's easy to rejig it. Um, you know, take out a part, well, redistribute the notes again, so you get a nice kind of yeah. So the two-part choir version, I've got got that here. Andy's Gone with Cattle, so it's kind of got a river's kind of a. Oh, Andy's gone with cattle now, our hearts are out of order. So, it's mostly in unison, has a couple of times where it splits. So I tried to think of those things, keeping it simple for a primary school choir to sing, but also making it a bit more challenging for the SSA, SSAA. Well, that happened with a number of those things. So instead of 20 songs, I ended up with 45 arrangements. Well, I think one of them I wrote four different versions. Oh no, five different versions. The Shores of Botany Bay. Do you know that one? Farewell to your bricks and mortar. Farewell to your da da da. Yeah. Anyway, Shores
Farewell
of
to your
Botany Bay.
gangplanks and your gangway.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Hell with your overtime. Go on the good ship Ragamuffin. Yeah. So I wrote one, two, three, four, five. I wrote six versions of that one. But I did do some transpositions as well, because knowing a little bit about vocal ranges, therefore you've got some extra choices. Yeah. So you can choose it in a couple of different keys with that one. So yeah, so there's a few interesting arrangements there, and some of them have a flute part or a violin part in case you have somebody at your school that can play. They're simple, that can play a part as well. If you buy a three-part, sorry, they're free. That's something I forgot to tell you. Everything is available for free because we've already been paid to do the job, which is just fantastic. And I'm very proud to have been a part of this project and to have this music available. Now, sometimes people perform in Eisteddfods and you have to sing an Australian song. Well, this is perfect. You can
Instant.
perfect
And while
one
you're
of these.
talking about how three great people, so there we go. We've got Faye White, Victoria
Yeah,
Sears short stuff.
yes.
This is one of the best
Ah,
books in the world. And
ah,
Faye White came up for a crescendo. I brought her up for a crescendo workshop several years back. She is amazing. So like
yeah,
three, but one of the things that occurred to me when I got the email about this, and I went, oh, how free, like everyone who's listening now, tune in, free, listen,
free.
free, all of this repertoire. But the three of you seem quite different.
Oh, very, very
Like
different.
va- we could say vastly different.
Vastly different, yes.
You know,
Because
it just
you know,
it will add so much color and delight to, the and you were approached specifically for Australian folk.
yes.
Were the other two doing did they have the same brief?
They had different briefs because Faye was composing poems by Michael Leunig.
Yes, she had the Lunig. You mentioned that
Yes,
one.
the Leunig.
Wow.
And Astrid had a kind of, she had more of a free sort of thing to compose. She's composed a few canons, some of the words I think relate to what's happening in the community now and making connections, and yeah, so they're very interesting. Yeah, and she has more of a contemporary approach to her writing as well. And of course, she said you can add something to it, add harmonies, wherever necessary, because she's put chords in and those sorts of things. So yeah, so we're asking teachers to add or subtract from what you want, what you want to do. And I mean, you could leave out the piano part in a couple of my accompaniments, in the song arrangements if you wanted to. So yeah.
So what would we find? Obviously, I will be putting the link in the show notes for all
Yes.
the salivating listeners right
Yeah.
now. But
Yes.
what will they find? What do? You can download a PDF of your various versions.
Yes. So, on the Kelly website and the Kodaly website, they have got the complete books up. So there's Astrid has a book, Faye has a book. I
Oh.
have two books, part one and part two. So yes,
She did so many.
I know. So you can download those as a PDF, okay? And then you can just print off the pages that you want. There are learning tracks that go with these as well. So
Wow.
my learning tracks are actually specifically for, they've got the soprano part turned up for you to learn the soprano part. So if there are music teachers that can't play the piano, it's all there for you to be able to play to help the kids learn help the kids to learn things. So yeah, and it's learning tracks then for other people. Everybody's technology these days, and
Yeah.
that's an easy way to learn things. Be prepared for your next rehearsal. That's always one of my things. It's nice if you have done your homework before you go to choir, rather than me bashing notes at choir. That is boring. We come together to put it together. So yeah, do your
Yeah.
home practice. So rehearsal tracks really work out well. Um, and my husband's actually just put up all the single PDFs of the single arrangements on my website as well. So you can go and look at my website and get the single PDF if you don't want to print off the whole book, because at in the beginnings of all my individual files, there's actually a glossary, because there's a lot of terms in some of the pieces.
Ah,
What's a squatter?
yes.
Um, those sorts of things. The cabbage tree hat. That's a great primary choir song. It's talking about making your cabbage tree hat. Your hat. It might be old, but it does the right thing. So a cabbage tree, of course, is a palm tree, and they used to weave the hats with this cabbage tree. Yeah. So there's a lot of there's a glossary. I also have put performance notes to help
So
as well.
even if someone finds something in your one of your volumes of your big fat books, then
Yes,
they could maybe, if they're going to select one or two pieces, it would be worth going to your website to get
yes,
that extra information on the piece they're going to perform, wouldn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Or it's just
So,
that it's actually with the individual piece then, yeah.
yes. So, what we might do, obviously, I'm going to put the link to the Queensland Kodaly Choir Legacy Project, but I will also put a link to your website, of
Website, yes.
course. And is the website, which sort of leads us quite perfectly to how people can connect with you and your work.
Yes,
So,
so
website,
yes, just sandramillican.com.au.
that's easy.
Yeah, really easy.
Okay. And is there any other place that you like to hang out social media wise, or not really? Your website's the main connection.
I have a composer page on Facebook, so I'll be putting up a few little references to this project now that it's been launched officially, and probably doing a couple of little presentations on some songs that I might choose from the group, from the actual volume, and talk to people about that. Yes, so you can go to my composer page on Facebook.
Yes, I
Um,
can put that link
yeah, I don't
into.
do a lot on Instagram, although people say I should, but
Oh, I know it's
there's
just the
so many.
time. It's the time to do everything. I
And then
know.
you've got to check it.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, if you're on something like Instagram, and I post very regularly, but you need to interact on the platform. And that's where
Yeah,
the time to get in there and interact, yeah. So if we put in the legacy link, the website link, and your Facebook
yes,
composer page link, and then
yes.
people can
That would be
connect
great. Yes.
and check out all of your repertoire.
hmm And on
Okay.
my website, it's very user friendly because you can actually just search two part or treble voices. You can search for voice types in some of my original pieces. You can also see there's thumbprints, and there's also some recordings of the pieces as well. And so, yeah, and there's
Oh,
a
that's
background, of
fabulous.
course, background to
Yes.
each of the pieces.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Look, before we leave, and I've got all this stuff I want to chase up now, I'll email you, Sandra, because I want to have a look
Okay.
at some of these pieces. Okay. Um, and I'll talk to Kath, really, our beautiful choral conductor too. We'll
Yeah.
see what we.
And also feel free, any listeners out there, feel free to email me. I'm Sandra at sandramillican.com.au. If you need, something in a different key, or you need the instrumental part printed out, because we have in it if you I've actually made the instrumental parts for a C instrument at the moment, but if you have a good clarinet player and you want it written in B flat, just, send me a quick message, because it's easy enough just to print off, transpose it for you, rather than somebody having to redo it. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just ask.
That is very generous of you, Sandra. And that's one of the things I love about the composers that I know. They're all so generous. Maybe it's Australian composers, maybe it's composers right across the world. You just want, even the few little pieces that I've written, you just want people to sing them, don't you?
Yes.
And if I can help you perform them, I will. But that's still very generous of you to do that.
Well, it's a time saver.
Yes, yeah.
It's
For other
already in there.
people,
So,
not for you,
yes.
but for other people, yes. Look, Sandra, I have loved learning more about you, and I'm sure all of our listeners have as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And we should
Bye.
meet for coffee.
Oh, actually, yes, we're actually in the same city. Let's have coffee.
Yes. Thanks so much, Debbie.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. I'd ask my teddy bear if he was hungry, but he's stuffed. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.